The night is merciless. She runs barefoot through the storm, every step carving pain into her body. The forest is no longer a refuge. It's a labyrinth of shadows that twist and close around her like a living trap. Branches claw at her skin, tearing through her torn cloak. The icy ground cuts like shards of glass, but still she pushes forward, lungs burning, vision blurred by rain and blood. Behind her, wolves howl. Their voices roll through the trees, deep and endless, a cruel reminder of the pack that cast her out. Each echo carries not loyalty but hunger. They are not calling her home. They are hunting her. The rain is colder than knives, lashing her face until it feels raw. It drowns her breath, seeps into her bones, and weighs her down with a heaviness that feels more than physical. The storm is no accident. It feels like punishment, like the heavens themselves mirror the rejection that shattered her beneath the blood moon. And still, she runs. Her mind is a battlefield, each memory crashing against her ribs with brutal force. The council's jeers sharp as broken glass, the sneer on the alpha's lips as he spoke the words that ended her life as she knew it. Rejected, stripped of place, stripped of name. She had stood in front of them with hope clinging to her chest like a final breath, believing the bond, believing the prophecy of mates, believing she would belong. Instead, she had been thrown into the fire of shame. The blood moon had glared down on her that night, its red light bathing her in betrayal, its silence condemning her as surely as their voices. Now, that same moon hides behind thick black clouds, but she still feels its weight pressing on her, watching, remembering. Her side throbs where claws had grazed her earlier in the chase. Warm blood seeps into her cloak, mixing with the icy rain until she cannot tell which sting belongs to the wound and which belongs to the storm. Every movement is agony, but she cannot stop. She will not, because stopping means capture, and capture means the end. The fog coils low across the ground, curling around her ankles like fingers trying to pull her down. Her body trembles with exhaustion, but the greater storm is inside her chest. She cannot silence the words that had shattered her. Unworthy, dangerous, a curse among wolves. Her breath comes in ragged bursts. Each inhale tastes of wet earth and iron. Each exhale feels like a confession she cannot voice. Her heart hammers, not only from fear of what chases her, but from fear of what she carries inside. Because deep in her palm, beneath the skin torn by thorns and stone, the faintest flicker of silver light pulses. It burns like a secret candle against the dark. For a heartbeat, it grows brighter, curling upward into the shape of a flame. The storm parts around it, as if the world itself remembers what she is. But then, it sputters out. The light vanishes, swallowed by rain and doubt. Her hand trembles, slick with mud and blood, and the emptiness that follows is worse than the pain. She knows what that flame means. She knows what it could do. But control has never been hers. Her power betrays her, just as her pack did. She stumbles, knees slamming into the ground, mud splashing across her skin. Her cry is swallowed by the thunder above. For a moment, she cannot move, cannot breathe. She presses her hand against the wound in her side and feels nothing but weakness. The forest tilts around her, a blur of dark trunks and clawing shadows. But the howls are closer now, louder. They echo with triumph, with certainty. They believe she cannot escape. Her body shakes as she forces herself upright. She spits rain from her lips, forces air into her lungs, and staggers forward again. Her legs burn, but she wills them into motion because she knows what waits if she falls. Her heart aches with memory. The night of the blood moon when she had stood under its red glow, trembling with hope that had been crushed. The Alpha's golden eyes had met hers, not with the bond she had felt in her veins, but with disgust. She remembers the smirk, the words that cut deeper than any claws. I reject you. Those 3 words had stripped her bare before them all. She had been nothing after that, not a mate, not a daughter of her bloodline, not even a wolf worth the soil beneath her feet. The storm lashes her again, pulling her back into the present. Every raindrop feels like mockery. Every gust of wind pushes her further into despair. But beneath it all, something inside her stirs. Not hope, not yet, but defiance. Her palm burns again, the faintest pulse beneath her skin. The silver flame flickers once more, fragile but alive. It frightens her, it tempts her. It reminds her that though the Alpha's rejection had broken her, it had not erased her. She clutches her hand to her chest, hiding the light as the forest shakes with the pounding of paws. They are almost upon her. She can hear them, smell the musk of their fur, feel the vibrations through the soaked ground. Her chest rises and falls with sharp, shallow breaths. Her vision narrows, the storm closing in, until the world is nothing but rain, trees, and the sound of death drawing near. And still, she runs. Every heartbeat is a prayer. Every step is defiance. Every gasp is proof that she is not gone. Not yet. The rejection may have cast her into exile. The council may have named her a curse. The Alpha may have left her to die beneath the blood moon, but she will not die here, not tonight. Because the storm cannot extinguish a fire that was born to burn. And if your heart is already racing, if you feel her breath in your own lungs and the sting of the rain on your skin, stay with us. Subscribe to Kismet Publishing Collection so you never miss the next chapter of stories that grip your soul. Stories that remind us that even in the darkest storms, the fire inside refuses to die. The forest goes still the way a held breath goes still. No birds, no wind. Even the rain seems to pause between drops. She feels it before she sees it, the shift in the dark, the prickle at the base of her neck, the low hum of power that does not belong to the storm. A shadow loosens from the tree line and walks toward her through the fog, unhurried, certain. He steps into the thin wash of lightning, and the world remembers his name before she lets herself think it. The Alpha, the one who broke her under the blood moon. He looks different and exactly the same, tall, cut from muscle and old battles, moving like the ground is his. Scars trace pale lines across his throat and knuckles, quiet stories of violence and survival. Gold burns in his eyes, hot, steady. Impossible to mistake, yet there is a haunted dimness flickering in their depths, like a lantern carrying smoke. Power rolls off him in slow, invisible waves, and the rain slides around his heat as if warned to keep its distance. She stumbles back, every nerve pulling taut. Her wound throbs, demanding attention she will not give it. The wolves behind her fall silent, and that silence is worse than their howls. It means they have seen him, too. It means they are thinking. His gaze locks on her. The storm, the shadows. The distance between them, none of it matters. She feels his attention land like a hand between her shoulder blades. She has dreamed of that focus. She has also feared it. He says her name, and the sound is low and wrecked, like something he hasn't allowed himself to say anywhere but in sleep. The forest carries it back to her, softer than the rain. Her body betrays her before her mind can form a shield. Heat blooms beneath her ribs, that infuriating pull of bond and memory, the same bond he denied beneath the red sky. Her jaw tightens, her fingers curl over empty air where a flame would be if it obeyed her. Paws scrape behind her, rival wolves closing in. The Alpha's head tilts a fraction, listening the way a hunter listens to the tremor of leaves. He does not look away from her. He doesn't need to. He has already mapped every branch, every breath, every threat. There's an old violence in him, colder than the storm, and it makes the night step carefully. The first attacker bursts through the fog, all teeth and momentum. She pivots, ignores the pull in her torn side, and raises her useless hand out of habit. No flame answers. The world compresses into fang and rain, and the taste of iron rising in her throat. He moves before her thought can catch up. Not a blur. Blurs are soft. He is impact. He is decision. He hits the wolf mid-lunge, shoulder driving through ribs, a clean, brutal angle. Mud leaps, bone gives. The attacker flips, lands wrong, and does not rise. Another shape arcs in from the left. He doesn't turn. His arm snaps back, and a wet crack folds the night. 2 down in a heartbeat that still hasn't finished. She hates the relief that rolls through her. She hates the spark under her skin that says safe and aims the word at him like a flag. She hates the way her chest opens just enough to breathe. The third wolf is clever. It slides through brush at her blind side. She senses it late, too late. She starts to twist, too slow. He is already there. He catches her by the waist and drives her down into the mud, his weight a wall above hers. The air leaves her lungs in a sharp, startled grunt. His palm finds the earth beside her head with a slap. His forearm bars her collarbone. His knee traps her thigh. There is no gentleness in the pin. It is efficient, ruthless, meant to immobilize something dangerous. She can smell rain in his hair and the copper of blood that is not hers. A snarl rips through his chest. Pure warning, aimed past her, aimed at the wolf that had taken that final step too close. Teeth flash. He meets them with his own. Gold eyes flare. He doesn't shift. He doesn't need to. Strength rolls through him like a second body. He surges, drags her with him a fraction to keep her beneath his center of balance, and then he is gone from above her, momentum flinging him into the attack. The sound that follows is ugly and fast. When he returns to her, he is breathing harder but steady, and the world around them is littered with shapes that will not stand again. He freezes. Their faces are close enough for her to count the flecks of darker amber near his pupils. Mud paints the blade of his jaw. Rain carves new rivers over old scars. He smells like wet pine, steel, and a heat that remembers her. His hand is still braced beside her head, sunk to the wrist in cold soil. His body's warmth presses along the length of her like a confession the night will keep, whether she wants it to or not. She wants to shove him away. Her muscles coil to do exactly that. Something older coils tighter to stop her. He releases her. It is not gentle. It is precise. His weight lifts, the bar of his arm disappears, and cold air slams back into the space where his body had been, suddenly, painfully empty. She sits up too fast, and the wound in her side screams a soundless white. She bites it down and meets his eyes with the sharpest thing she has left, her fury. Fear, attraction, rage, none of them ask permission. They tangle, burn, and leave her shaking. She hates the heat in her cheeks. She hates the steadiness in him, the way his breath slows because he decided it will slow. She hates that he has always moved like someone born to be chosen. "Why are you here?" she spits, and the question tastes like blood and years. Her voice is low and steady and nothing like the tremor in her hands. He doesn't look away. He swallows, a small motion that cuts across the hard line of his throat. "Because I never stopped watching." The words land with the accuracy of an arrow, and she wants to laugh at the cruelty of it. Watching, the thing cowards do from shadows, the thing tyrants do from thrones, the thing lovers do when they can't admit their own breaking. She bares her teeth, and the first shape of a flame twitches in her palm like it wants to be born out of spite alone. He sees it, of course he does. He angles his body between her and the tree line, not to block her, but to widen his field. The posture of someone who will take a hit and keep standing. He lifts his chin, scenting the air, counting threats she can't hear yet. The gold in his stare heats, but the haunted dimness doesn't leave. It deepens, as if her pain adds a room to a house he already cannot walk through without waking ghosts. "You pinned me," she says, each word measured, because measured is the only way to keep from shaking. The rain chooses that moment to come back hard, drumming on leaves, flattening the fog into a low, creeping sheet. He flicks his gaze down her body just once, not hungry, cataloging damage. I kept you alive. The answer is plain, empty of triumph, and it infuriates her more than arrogance would have. Arrogance can be cut. Clean answers leave nothing to stab. A branch snaps in the distance. He turns his head slightly toward the sound. His hand opens and closes once, blood slicking his knuckles, a small human tell in a body bred for command. He takes a step back from her, like distance is a payment he owes. He takes another like restraint is a language he had to learn the hard way. The forest exhales. The rival pack, what's left of it, fades into the wet dark, rethinking math. Even silence has an audience when he stands in it. She pushes to her feet. The ground sways, then settles. She straightens to her full height and refuses the hunch her wound begs for. He watches the refusal like a man punished by both pride and concern. The rain has plastered her hair to her face. She drags it back with shaking fingers, and the small silver spark in her palm peaks again, defiant and frightened, child and blade. His gaze drops to it. Not fear, not hunger, recognition, and something like grief. "You don't get to look at me like that," she says, breath thin, fury hot enough to keep the cold off her bones. "I'm looking at the cost," he answers low. The cost of what he did, of what she is, of what the blood moon decided they would never be. The word ricochets through her ribs and lands where old love used to live. She hates that the shape fits. Another crack of thunder splits the sky. The light throws their shadows long and snarling across the churned ground. For an instant, they look like what the world once promised, two halves of a force it should have feared. The light dies, and the promise collapses with it. "Don't follow me," she says, because that is the only command left to her. "Don't watch me. Don't—" He steps forward once, not enough to threaten, just enough to make the air warm again. His voice goes rough. "I already have." The truth of it hangs between them, heavy, shameless, wrong, and somehow not enough. She wants him gone. She wants him closer. She wants him to hurt. She wants him to heal her in ways that have nothing to do with hands. The forest gives them one mercy, motion. Danger shifts further out. Choices narrow to the immediate, move or bleed out. She turns away first. Pride demands the risk. She takes a step, then another, testing her body against the mud. The silver spark in her palm steadies to a faint pulse, like a heartbeat under glass. Behind her, his footsteps do not follow. They pace parallel, close enough that the night has to consider him, far enough that she can pretend it is coincidence. He is a shield she did not request and a wound she cannot bandage. Power hums at her back, steady, infuriating, familiar. He speaks once more, voice angled so it won't chase her if she refuses it. "The ones who came for you tonight weren't only rivals." A pause, thin as a blade. "They were hired." Rain ticks, trees listen. Her spine goes cold in a way the storm couldn't manage. Hired means hunted with intention. Hired means someone with reach wants her either caged or gone. She doesn't turn. She doesn't give him her face or her fear. But inside, something locks into place. A new map draws itself over the old. Survival is no longer a path away from him. It may be a path that runs beside him until the ground decides otherwise. He holds his distance, pacing the tree shadows like a promise he's not brave enough to make out loud. When the wind shifts, she hears the smallest scrape in his breath, the kind that says even alphas carry pain they don't name. Fear, attraction, rage twist in her chest and refuse to let go. The flame in her palm answers with a fragile glow, as if her fury feeds it better than hope ever did. The storm presses its mouth to the canopy and listens as two wolves who are not a pair and not strangers walk deeper into a night that now knows both their names. The forest moves around her, but her thoughts drag her backward. Every step she takes through the mud and rain opens an older wound. The storm outside is brutal, but it cannot compete with the storm she carries in memory. The blood moon night comes back whether she invites it or not. She sees herself standing in the council's circle, body trembling with a kind of hope that now feels like a cruel trick. The moon had bled red across the sky, so swollen it seemed ready to collapse on them all. Her cloak had been new then, her hair braided for ceremony. She had believed the night would change her life. She was not wrong. He was there, taller than the others, the alpha. His shoulders squared with command, his eyes burning gold. Every heartbeat in her chest had told her that he was hers, that destiny had not made a mistake. She had felt the bond in her marrow, hot and sure. But when he opened his mouth, the words did not match the bond. I reject you. 3 syllables. Enough to cut through her chest like claws. Enough to splinter her into a girl no longer belonging anywhere. The council had laughed, not all of them, but enough. Some had smirked behind their hands. Others had nodded as though this had been inevitable. Her father had bowed his head, disgrace pulling his shoulders into a hunch she had never seen before. For him, it was not only her shame, it was his daughter, branded a curse under the sacred moon. That shame burned hotter than the rejection itself. They had not called her dangerous out loud, but she had seen it in their eyes. They remembered the stories. The girl with fire in her blood. The girl who could not control it. The girl who burned more than she meant to. The silver flame had shown itself when she was young, wild, alive, curling from her palms without warning. At first, they had called it a gift. Then, after the first accident, when the barn caught fire and the horses screamed, it became a curse. Whispers followed her down corridors. Mothers pulled their children aside. Fathers tightened their grip on their sons' shoulders. She had begged for guidance, for training, for someone to show her how not to destroy. No one offered. Fear built walls higher than compassion ever could. By the time she stood under the blood moon, she was already alone. His rejection only made it official. Exile had been the price, not written, not spoken, but enforced with silence and locked doors. No food left at her step, no eyes meeting hers in the village, no place at the table. She had walked into the woods with nothing but her breath, and even that felt stolen. Survival carved her. Nights in hollow trees, days with hunger gnawing her ribs, scars mapping her arms and legs from fights with beasts who wanted her weaker than she already was. She had learned the taste of solitude until it was the only taste she knew. But now, his presence. He moves beside her, not touching, not speaking, but existing. And that is enough to unravel threads she had tied so tightly. He had seen her flame tonight and had not flinched, not once. Where others had recoiled, where even she had feared herself, he had stood still. His golden eyes had watched the spark, not with terror, but with a kind of quiet recognition that unsettled her more than hatred ever could. Why doesn't he fear it? Why doesn't he fear her? The question needles at her chest, digging deeper the more she tries to ignore it. Shame says it's because he pities her. Pride says it's because he knows she is stronger than she looks. Both voices argue until her pulse stumbles. Every step she takes feels split between those two truths. Shame wraps around her like the wet cloak sticking to her skin. Pride presses against her ribs, whispering that the flame inside her is not a curse. It is survival. It is legacy. It is something no rejection can erase. She remembers the way his hand pressed her into the earth, the weight of him, the heat he carried. She remembers the moment his eyes met hers, unblinking, unafraid, and she hates the part of her that almost felt seen. She shakes her head, tries to silence the thought, but it lingers like smoke after fire. Because no matter how she fights it, his presence disarms her, and that is the most dangerous thing of all. The rain thins to a mist that hangs in the trees like breath that never left a mouth. The forest's spine lifts into a low ridge, and the path narrows until it is less a trail than a memory pressed into sodden earth. He angles ahead, not touching her, but drawing the night aside with the gravity of his stride. The wind hushes as if warned. Beyond a tangle of alder and thorn, the trees pull back all at once, and the world opens. An old circle sleeps in a clearing no map would admit, 12 stones the height of watchtowers, each sunk deep and furred with lichen, each waiting as if patience were a currency they never run out of. Moonlight breaks through the torn clouds and washes the stones in pale fire. The light is not white. It carries a faint shimmer the color of her blood when it decides to glow. She stops at the ring's edge. The ground is cold enough to bite through her soles, yet the center breathes warmth. A heat that rises from beneath the stones, like a hearth 2,000 winters old. He says nothing. He doesn't need to. This place is not a secret. It is a truth. It demands quiet in the way deep water demands air. The carvings reveal themselves slowly, as if shy after so much dark. First lines, then arcs, then a script cut by hands that never learned softness. The grooves run in spirals that double back and knot, a language that prefers the curve of a wolf's path to the square of human walls. As the moon lifts, the cuts begin to drink light. Silver gathers in each channel until the stones seem to wake from a long fever dream. Her fists close without meaning to. The same light sleeps under her skin. The scent here is old rain, cracked stone, and something sweet and metallic, like heated coins in a palm. A low hum builds in the air, not sound exactly, but pressure. It settles on the crown of her head and runs down her spine in a single unbroken line. The pulse in her wounded side answers with a slower, deeper beat, less pain than punctuation. She swallows, and the taste of ash creeps up the back of her throat, memory trying to name itself. He takes one measured step into the circle. The wind veers and dies. The stones lean not forward but toward attention. He turns his head just enough to bring her into his peripheral gaze. The gold in his eyes has dimmed to ember, yet the ember knows its own forest. She crosses the threshold. Heat brushes her ankles. The fog recedes to the tree line as if struck. The nearest monolith bears a spiral cut in 3 loops. The inner loop is cramped, almost strangled. The outer loop widens in a calm she does not trust. When she reaches toward the groove, the silver in it brightens, and a moth, pale as a thought, drifts from the lichen and settles on her knuckles. The wings tremble once and still. Her palm answers with a flicker. The flame rises, thin and upright, no larger than a candle's tongue, but somehow heavier. It casts no shadow. It offers no warmth. It is simply itself, silver made into a verb. The hum swells. The ground under the circle shifts from dirt to memory. Images climb the stones, not pictures, not quite. Impressions that fold into her eyes and refuse to leave. A woman with a bare throat and ash in her hair lifts her hands and breathes out light. A pack kneels without being asked. A child stands in a doorway and sets a copper cup alight, not in destruction but in greeting. The flame does not consume, it remakes. Then the visions sour. A hall of antlers blackens at the tips. Wolves turn their faces away. The woman with ash in her hair screams without sound as the light in her hands becomes a river that will not stay in its bed. The voice does not come from the stones or the sky or him. It comes from under her feet, as if the earth has decided to speak through bone. The child of the flame will either save the wolves or burn them to ash. The sentence uncoils and does not end. It goes on, living in the marrow, repeating without echo. Not prophecy as threat, not promise as comfort, judgment held without verdict. The flame in her palm wavers and steadies, like a vein deciding how fast to carry blood. She wants to step back. Her muscles suggest it. Her pride refuses. She lifts her chin and breathes through the taste of metal. Doubt makes a nest behind her ribs and calls itself practical. She hears its small claws. Save is a word for saints and generals. She is neither. Burn is a thing she has already done, by accident. He circles to face her across the center point, not closing distance, not widening it. The stones behind him hold a different set of cuts, straight strokes, a language that likes edges. His chest rises once the way a man prepares to cut a knot that won't unknot itself. I knew, he says, voice dropped into the pitch that places truth where it can't be kicked aside. I knew before the moon took its color. I knew before I said the words. Her jaw tightens. The circle hears it. The hum changes key. He looks past her shoulder for one heartbeat, as if the past were standing there expecting apology. When his gaze returns, the ember in his eyes is nearly human. The story was given to me before I could shift without falling. I was told your line would come back through another house to hide it. I was told the mark wouldn't be ink or scar. I was told I would know because my bond would light like a struck nail. His mouth hardens at his own metaphor, as if he resents how well it fits. I knew the instant you stood in the circle, and every path I ran through ended in war. Her fingers loosen to keep from shaking. So you cut me out to keep your maps clean. I cut you out, he says, and the words gray as if they've been left in rain too long, because the council would have strapped you to an altar and called it wisdom, because the old alphas would have tried to chain a river, because the enemies who don't carry our scent would have watched us hold the brightest torch and waited for the wind. He swallows. The ember lowers to a coal. And because I was a coward. The circle does not pretend not to hear. The nearest stone takes the confession and sets it in its groove with ruthless neatness. Somewhere under the earth, something shifts position, but does not wake. A laugh rises to the back of her tongue and dies there. She is not interested in the brittle satisfaction it would buy. Shame prowls the clearing, lean and patient. Pride lifts its head and refuses to eat from its hand. She holds his gaze because it costs her, and cost is the only tender this place respects. Protect me, she says, and the phrase comes out without a question mark, like a label she refuses to wear. Protect you, he answers, not flinching from the scorn, letting it scrape him, and protect what you could be, or protect myself from you, from them. From the truth of wanting something the world will ruin if I name it out loud. Moonlight climbs the stones one notch higher. The carvings on the northern pillar flare with new detail. A wolf stretched long in mid-leap, a river of light trailing from its throat, a field of bodies sleeping, not dead, as if waiting for permission. Her palm warms. The silver flame lifts, steadier now. It licks the air once, tasting. The hum trues into something like a held chord. She feels the call in the bones of her feet, not a tug, not a command, recognition. This place knows her, not because she is rare, but because she has the same fault line cut through her that the stones carry. Creation braided with ruin, both asking to be chosen first. Fate does not say, please. It says her name like he said it in the fog. Hearing both makes the same muscle jump in her throat. Doubt does not leave. It evolves. Can a river promise to run without flooding? Can a flame promise to warm without scarring? She tastes ash again and does not look away from it. If she is to carry this, she will carry it awake. Say the rest, she tells him, because partial truth is still a lie in places like this. He obeys, and the obedience costs him. When I rejected you, they cheered. The ones who feared you believed me strong. The ones who feared me believed me loyal. I bought you time with their applause. His hand flexes, blood dried into the lines of his palm, old and new red, crossing like roads. But I also bought myself time to decide if I could stand beside you when the circle woke and the old stories came to collect interest. The wind finally remembers itself and tests the clearing's edge. The fog, barred by whatever law holds the circle, piles against an invisible boundary and seethes like sea foam against rock. Somewhere beyond the tree wall, a single owl calls and is answered by nothing. The world listens with its teeth. A vision pushes through the stone behind him, not a picture, but a sense. Wolves strung between two hills like a rope, enemies without faces hunting with coin instead of hunger, a council hall lit from below, as if the fire has been moved to the foundation for quicker access. She knows, without knowing how she knows, that the hired pack was only the first payment. Something else with longer fingers keeps a ledger. The prophecy may be the reason, but politics will be the tool. The flame in her palm rises to the height of her wrist and stays there. No sputter now, no panic. It makes no heat. But the air around it tightens as if obeying a new center of gravity. The silver in the carvings answers with a mounted glow, each groove a vein, each stone a heart. The circle's hum is no longer a pressure. It is a tone she could climb. Doubt and destiny stand on either side of her and wait. She knows which one will move first. It always does. He lowers his head, not bowing, not pleading, making room for a blow that may not land tonight, but is owed. "If you tell me to leave this place, I will go," he says. "If you command me to stand outside the ring and face what comes without your name in my mouth, I will do it. If you ask me why I am still here, I will tell you again, because I never stopped watching, and because watching is no longer enough." The words press against the skin just under her sternum, where the old wound from the moon still sits. She could press them back. She could thread them with anger until they unravel. Instead, she does nothing. The circle hates cheap answers. She turns her palm, and the silver tongue of fire tilts with it, fluid, obedient to angle if not to will. The sight is simple and terrifying. Control is not mastery. Control is a conversation. The stones brighten one shade more, and for a breath she hears layered voices rise through the hum. Not command, not comfort, kin. They do not say save. They do not say burn. They say choose. She stands in the ring with the alpha across from her and the old world waking under her heels, and feels the truth slide into place like a blade in a sheath it was meant for. Fate has called her by name. Doubt has made its case. The circle will keep its counsel until she moves. She closes her fingers slowly around the silver flame. It does not die. It narrows to a line inside her fist, a live wire held without shock. When she opens her hand again, her palm is empty and full. "You bought time," she says at last, voice level in a way it has not been since the blood moon. "Spend it well." The stones take the sentence and store it. The moon lifts another finger width. The hum turns expectant. Somewhere beyond the ridge, the hired wolves regroup around the absence they created. In the council hall, a chair sits waiting for the first coward to sit and call it duty. He doesn't step closer. He doesn't step away. The choice echoes in his chest as clearly as it does in hers. The circle holds all outcomes at once, like breath before a word, and for the first time since the night she was broken under a red sky, she feels the world adjusting, not around her, but to her. The myth has opened its eye. Destiny has rolled its shoulders. The next movement will be hers. The hum in the stones drops a note, not warning but count. The fog at the tree line thickens and then shears, as if torn from the inside. Eyes appear before bodies, row on row, low and wrong, too bright for wolf, too dull for man. The clearing inhales. The first rival hits the boundary at a sprint and rebounds with a yelp, not stopped by force but turned by an old rule. A second learns, angles through a break in the standing stones, and the rest pour after him with the greedy confidence of followers. They come bearing another alpha's scent, iron, cold sap, meat left too long in the sun. He strides last, flanked by lieutenants whose scars are maps of bad decisions rewarded. His gaze skates over the circle and snags on her. His lips curve the way a blade curves. "There," he says, for his pack and the ghosts, "the reason the dead do not rest." Shadow beasts move with them, not wolves, not any animal that belongs to this climate of breath. Their silhouettes smear at the edges as if drawn in water. When they howl, the pitch slides wrong. Too high, too human, then sinks into a throat noise that makes teeth ache. The moon flinches behind a cloud and doesn't come back out. The alpha beside her shifts his stance without stepping closer. Weight set, chin lifted, shoulders ready to split. He doesn't look at her. He doesn't need to. He feels the way her palm warms, the way the circle leans, the way the air tightens like a drum over fire. His hesitation isn't weakness. It's a scale trying to measure two different kinds of loss. The rival pauses just inside the threshold, pretending courtesy while counting risks. He spreads his arms to make his chest a pulpit. "You bring a curse into the ring," he calls, letting his pack hear the echo. "You feed a story that burned us once and will burn us again. Look how the stone fawns over her hand. Hear how the ground hums for her. Tell me this isn't madness dressed as destiny." His wolves growl at the cadence, not the words. The shadow things mimic the sound a beat late, as if lagging on some other moon. She meets the accusation without flinching. The silver line inside her fist draws itself thinner, truer. The carvings behind her pulse in answer, once as if to say present. She could speak. She doesn't. The circle hates debate theater. It wants moves. The alpha at her back finally gives her his profile, gold eyes hard, mouth set. "Turn back," he says to the intruders, voice stripped of ceremony. "You brought carrion into a place built on oaths. I will not let you stain it." "You do not get to speak of oaths," the rival answers, smiling like someone who has already chosen the story the survivors will tell. He points at her, not with a finger, but with his whole body. "She is cursed. She'll doom us all." The words hit the stones and skitter. The circle refuses to hold them. His smile twitches. He hadn't expected the place itself to argue. He shifts to the other battleground, faces turned toward him, ears tuned for permission. "Brothers," he says, "sisters, we are asked to bow to a flame that has already burned barns, burned halls, burned trust. We are asked to trust an alpha who keeps his own counsel and calls it protection." He tilts his head toward the man at her side. "Choose her, and you choose death. Choose us, and you choose the pack." The lieutenants murmur the line like a prayer they've practiced. "Choose her, and lose us." Her jaw locks. The old shame reaches for her with familiar hands. Pride breaks its grip at the wrist. The first shadow beast commits. It surges low, aiming past her hip for the point where people are soft. She pivots, ready to spend pain like coin. The alpha moves faster. He meets the thing mid-lunge, and his forearm drives through its shape as though through wet cloth. It shrieks. Two voices braided wrong and folds, leaving a smear that smells like cold salt and graves. He shakes his arm as if shaking off oil. His eyes narrow. This isn't a pack fight. This is a hired trick that will not bleed like a body. The rival laughs softly. You see, even the night spits up what she draws. Another shadow slips left. A wolf tries right. He answers both. A series of decisions so clean they look like predestination. But there are too many, and the rival's pack has learned to let the beasts take the first blows, to watch and conserve the cuts that count. She steps in. The line in her palm extends. A thread at first, then a ribbon. Never flame the way mortals mean flame. It touches the air, and the air rings. A shadow beast reaches into that ring and recoils as if its hand has been put through glass. The silver doesn't burn, it refuses. The beast's outline frays where it met the refusal and doesn't recover. Wolves pause. Men stare. The rival's mouth flattens. Which? He says it without heat, like a craftsman naming a tool he wants banned after losing a job to it. You've trained your curse since your exile, and you think that makes you part of us again? It makes you an altar, waiting to be used. He cuts his gaze to the alpha beside her. And you, still pretending your hesitation is strategy. Choose her and lose us. Choose us and prove you remember what an alpha is for. The words find their mark. The man at her side does not move, but the fight in his eyes becomes visible, not just in color, but in shape. Two roads diverging under a sky that promises rain for both. He hears the math of bodies he has sworn to keep. He hears the drum of a prophecy he cannot unhear. He hears her breath. Steady now in a way it wasn't in the storm. The rival lifts his hand. His wolves surge. Short feints to test, not to take. The shadow things pour in with them, a dirty tide, edgeless, endless. She answers with a silver ribbon, drawing lines that are less attack than boundary, like chalk that the dead remember. Each time a beast touches it, a part of that beast fails to exist for a second longer. It is not victory, it is time purchased in fractions. Enough, the rival says finally, bored of testing. He drops the pretense of honor and gestures a lieutenant forward, thick-shouldered, ears scarred, eyes hard from too many nights winning the wrong fights. The man rolls his neck and lopes toward her, but his path aims to clip the alpha at her side, to make decision into instinct. The alpha chooses. He steps, not in front of her, not away, into the exact space that turns the lieutenant's angle into a mistake. His shoulder catches the man's sternum and collapses his idea of himself. Bone pops. Breath leaves. The follow-up is merciless. The lieutenant hits the ground and doesn't get up. Roars. Scramble. The rival bares his teeth, not enraged, calculating. He tips his chin and three more move together. The alpha braces for the crash, and in the gap before it, the rival plants his words where they will root. This ends with her gone, he calls. Not to them, not to her, to the forest that will spread the rumor to every den. Send her away or drown in the blood she draws. The circle listens without agreeing. It will not choose for them. The crash comes. Bodies thud. Claws rake. Mud sprays. She holds the silver line as steady as her muscles will let her, closing holes, opening corridors, keeping the fight inside physics instead of whatever the shadows want. Her side aches in a steady beat that tries to sync with fear. She refuses the tempo. The alpha moves like a story told by a sober witness, short, brutal, with the grace of someone who learned beauty and then had it beaten out of him until only function remained. It cannot last, not like this. Numbers eat skill when given time. The rival sees it. He softens his mouth into something like pity and pitches his voice so it skims under the noise. Choose her and lose us, he repeats, gentler, like a friend reminding a friend of the house rule. Or send her from the ring, and we end this like wolves instead of like men who forgot their dead. The pack looks to their alpha. The shadow thing still for half a breath, scenting decision. The man beside her stops moving. Not surrender, not fear. The point where a road picks the walker. He turns his head enough to put her in the center of his sight. Gold meets the silver that has crept up her wrist. What he is about to do will write itself into him where even time won't sand it away. He speaks without raising his voice. Leave the ring. The words are a blade sliding between ribs, clean, chosen. He does not touch her. He does not add for now. He holds the pack's eyes and pays the price he set. The rival exhales, satisfied by shape if not by heart. He lifts his hand and his wolves back a step, giving the fiction of path. She tastes iron, not from the wound, from something older split open again. The circle hums, a note below hearing, not protest, not approval. Her pride stands very still so her shame will not mistake movement for retreat. She turns from the stones that called her true and walks. Every step over the boundary feels like crossing a name off a list she didn't write. The fog welcomes her back like an old landlord. The rival doesn't pursue. He doesn't need to. He has won the version of victory his kind believes in. At the edge of the clearing, the wind rises, the kind that carries weather from mountains. She does not look back at him, or the man who told her to go, or the circle that warmed to her hand. She looks into the tree dark, into the problem that hired shadows to test a prophecy. "I will return," she whispers, and the storm takes it, folds it, and returns it to the stones as a promise with teeth. The storm has teeth, but the cave they find swallows most of its bite. A narrow mouth opens between slabs of rock, and inside the walls drip with slow water, carrying the scent of stone older than their names. The fire he builds is small, cautious, its crackle no louder than a whisper. Shadows stretch long across the walls, shifting as if they too want to listen. She sits near the flame, cloak clinging damp against her skin. Every muscle hums with the exhaustion of battle, but her thoughts refuse to soften. The rival Alpha's words still echo, cursed, doomed, unfit. She turns her palm over and watches the faint afterglow of silver fade. For a moment, she is only a girl staring at a hand that doesn't belong to her. He lowers himself opposite her. His chest rises slower now, but each breath carries weight. Mud has dried along his jaw, splitting in lines like a map of strain. She notices the way he favors one arm, the quiet grimace when he shifts. He doesn't complain. Alphas don't. But when the firelight catches the torn fabric across his side, she sees what he meant to hide. A scar, long, jagged, still fresh from tonight, crossing older marks that never healed smooth. Her breath falters. Not because of the wound alone, but because scars live in layers. She has seen men wear them as trophies, as warnings, as excuses. He wears his like a ledger he never closed. "You should have let me take the strike," she murmurs. Not accusation, but truth, pressed thin. He meets her eyes through the dance of flame. The gold is dimmer, smoke curling around ember. It was mine to take. His voice is low, not proud, not bitter, simply decided. Silence lingers, broken only by the hiss of damp wood. She watches the rise of his ribs, the stillness in his shoulders. Something unsettles in her chest. She doesn't want to ask, but the words push through. Those scars, not all of them came from war. His jaw tightens. Shadows deepen the hollows of his face. He doesn't answer at once, and she almost withdraws, but then his mouth opens, deliberate. No. Some came from battles outside the field. Some from choices I made thinking they were strength. His gaze drops briefly to his hand, still raw from striking shadow beasts until they unraveled. Some from nights I thought silence was protection, when it was only fear dressed in command. Her pulse skips. Vulnerability from him is rare, rarer still when it arrives without armor. She feels the weight of his words, not as confession to her, but as a wound he no longer bothers to hide. The fire shifts, sending a wave of heat across her face. Her own scars stir, invisible but no less sharp. She draws her knees close, pressing her forehead to them before lifting her voice, steady but quiet. "My flame," she says. "It isn't the council's stories I fear, it's my own." Her hand lifts, trembling as silver flickers at her fingertips. "Once, when I was younger, it came without warning. I lost control. It spread faster than thought. Someone I loved stood too close." Her throat tightens. The words resist. They didn't die, but they carried the burns. Every time I saw their skin, I saw my failure. The spark falters. She closes her hand over it, as if strangling memory itself. She expects recoil. She expects his face to close. Instead, he studies her, not with pity, not with horror, but with something steadier, recognition. "You think I don't know what it is to almost destroy what you meant to protect?" His voice roughens, carrying old weight. Every alpha learns it. Some hide it behind power. Some drink until the memory blurs. Some call it sacrifice so the guilt feels holy. His eyes catch the fire, and for an instant the gold flares. But you carry it raw. That makes you dangerous, yes, but it also makes you true. Her chest tightens, a knot she cannot untangle. She doesn't want his understanding. She doesn't want his acceptance. And yet her bones ache from holding the flame alone. The silence grows thick. The fire pops, throwing sparks between them. Shadows climb higher on the walls as if leaning in. Their eyes lock, hers sharp with resistance, his heavy with intent. The air itself changes, charged, trembling. Every inch of space between them feels alive, stretched thin as a thread about to snap. He leans forward just slightly, the shift barely audible. Her breath catches. His gaze drops to her mouth, then back to her eyes. The moment pulls them both taut, suspended between refusal and surrender. Almost, the world bends closer. She stops it with a whisper, barely sound. "Why don't you fear me?" The answer doesn't hesitate. It comes rough, quiet, unshaken. "Because I see you, all of you, and I do not fear you." The words land with the force of a hand pressed to a wound, not healing, not hurting, but holding. Her throat aches. The knot loosens enough to let breath in. She looks away, but the firelight refuses to let her hide. The storm outside claws at the rocks, demanding entry, but the cave keeps it at bay. Inside, only the fire speaks, and the silence they share is not emptiness, but weight. For the first time in years, she feels not cursed, not weapon, not exile. She feels seen, and that is almost more dangerous than rejection. Dawn tries and fails to make a tender entrance. The sky bruises purple as if it too took a hit in the night. They leave the cave before the fire dies, stepping into air that smells like wet iron and old decisions. The path to the council grounds cuts through birch and stone, a thin scar the forest never healed. No one speaks. He walks on her left, a presence she can feel without turning, a warmth she refuses to lean toward. Her palm is quiet, silver sleeping under skin, obedient for once. It feels like peace. It feels like the pause before a blade lands. The hall rises from the ridge like a jawbone, timber blackened by rain, antlers nailed above the door, carvings of old hunts marching along the beams, wolves fixed in victories that cost nothing to remember. Wolves wait outside, rows of eyes, rows of ears, breath clouding in the chill. Curiosity, suspicion, relief, resentment, pack feelings layered like sediment. The circle's hum is far behind them now. This place runs on a different power, the kind that loves rules more than mercy. They enter to a hush that isn't respect. The council sits on their carved chairs, heavy with age and certainty. Her father is there, thinner than memory, grief stitched into his mouth where pride used to live. He will not meet her eyes. She feels the stitch pull on her own lip. A child's reflex she thought she killed. The alpha takes his place below the raised dais, not on it. The gesture matters. He keeps his voice low, even. He reports the attack at the stones, the hired shadows, the rival's threat. He names what he can without naming her flame. He is careful. Every syllable is a step on river ice. They let him talk long enough to make him hope. The traitor does not wait for permission. She steps from the crowd with a confidence borrowed from someone else's coin, a young wolf with clean hands and eyes like polished flint. Her voice carries the brightness of someone who believes righteousness is a mirror they can hold up without seeing their own face in it. She returned to the circle, the girl says. She lit the stones. I saw the grooves drink her light. I saw the beasts hiss where her silver touched. The old story has found its vessel. The room shifts its weight. A low murmur travels the floorboards. Her father's fingers clench once on the chair arm and go still, as if motion itself might condemn him. The alpha's jaw drums once and stops. "Stand down," he tells the girl. "Not unkind, not yet. You speak without the whole." "The whole is simple," the girl replies, gaze sliding to the council like a gift. She is the child of the flame, the prophecy that burned our barns, our sons, our sleep. You brought her back into the ring. You stood at her side. A pause, sharpened to draw blood. You hid her. The council lifts its collective chin. The oldest among them raises a hand to quiet nothing. His eyes cut through smoke and story with the impatience of a man who has learned the world only listens to him when he names a fear. Bring her forward. She could refuse. She could let the hall think of her as rumor and coals. But hiding wrote the last chapter. She steps into the center, boots damp, cloak torn, head high because there is more than one way to fall. Gasps climb the rafters. Not all surprise. Some satisfaction. The narrative likes confirmations. The old man studies her. He does not see a person so much as a lever. "You," he says, and the word is not a greeting. "You will end us." Her mouth tastes of ash again. She swallows it. "I will end your fear if you let me." He snorts softly. A curse lecturing the lock. The alpha takes half a step forward. It is enough to shift the attention in the room. "She saved wolves last night," he says. "She drew lines the shadows couldn't cross. Without her, this hall would be counting bodies." "And with her," the old man answers, turning his head to make sure every ear catches the cadence, "we will learn to count ashes." The words ripple outward. Others straighten, emboldened. The young trader smiles, not wide but with small, neat teeth. "The vision is clear," she says. "The prophecy says save or burn. We are fools if we wager the pack on a coin that has razors for edges." Her father finally looks at his daughter. It lasts a heartbeat. His eyes beg without sound. Leave before they make it worse. She does not nod. She does not blink. The connection snaps like a wet thread. "Her flame will destroy us," the old man declares, and the benches answer with the thud of fists. She cannot remain. The verdict is not a shout, it's a settling. Dust deciding to keep the table. Wolves move, the kind of movement that isn't attack yet but wants to be. Hands slide to hilts out of habit. Words stack like stones ready for a wall. She waits for his voice, the one that steadied in the cave, the one that said, "I see you." It doesn't come. He stands beside her, shoulders squared, throat working once. Eyes lit and unreadable. Hesitation threads through his gaze, quick, then gone, then back. Doubt doesn't need time to ruin trust. It only needs to be seen. Something inside her tilts. It is small. It is total. The girl who stood under the blood moon feels her ribs again. The sound the council made when they laughed. The silence the village wore like a cloak. The way the alpha's mouth shaped rejection, and she believed it would kill her. She thought she had burned that scene to ash. Now she realizes ash remembers. Her palm heats. She doesn't command it. She doesn't resist it. Grief liquefies into something sharp. The silver rises, not a thread this time, an arc. The hall draws breath with her and cannot exhale. The first wave leaves her hand like a held note released. It moves without flame's chaos, clean as a blade through water. It does not scorch, it insists. The floor trembles under the insistence. The roof timbers groan. Antlers clatter from pegs and crash to the flagstones. Wolves drop to knees not from worship, not from fear, from pressure. The silver fills the hall without touching anyone and still touches everyone. It is light with weight, sound with mass. The old man's chair skids an inch. His hands clutch the arms and cannot hide the tremor. Her father gasps, a sound split between fear and awe. The young trader's smile collapses into a flat line. Her body discovers humility too fast to accept it. She could push. She could turn the weight into damage. She could break beams and ribs and certainty. The power hovers at the fulcrum, waiting for her to choose what kind of story she will be in their mouths tomorrow. She chooses neither mercy nor ruin. She chooses witness. The second wave is softer and heavier. The ground answers with a low, rolling shudder that travels out of the hall, down the ridge, into the village lanes. Doors rattle. Sleepers sit up with hands to hearts. In the forest, birds fling themselves into air because earth suddenly moved like water. The roof does not fall. The wolves do not die. But every knee feels stone. Every throat learns quiet. The alpha does not bow. He braces. His eyes widen a fraction, not in fear, in recognition of a scale finally measuring something honestly. He looks at her the way men look at weather that rewrites maps. She turns, leaving the light hanging in the air like a long-held judgment. She walks past the old man whose verdict has lost its echo. She passes the young traitor who cannot decide whether to spit or pray. She passes her father who raises a hand and lowers it because he cannot choose which love to betray. At the threshold she stops. Not to speak to them, not to argue. She is done giving explanations to people who only hear what fits. She speaks to the room itself, to the beams, to the floor worn by paws and boots, to the air that will carry rumor down every corridor. When the night comes back with a name and a price, she says, voice even, remember who steadied the roof. She steps into cold light. The sky has cleared enough for the sun to put one pale hand on the ridge. Wind cuts her cheeks clean. Behind her, the hall exhales in a single broken sound. He calls her name. Only once. The sound lands on the stones and doesn't follow. She does not turn. She cannot bear his face with doubt still flickering behind the ember. She runs. Not with the blind panic of the first night, not with the hunted scramble that the wolves prefer to see in her. She runs like a storm, walking on its own legs. The trees open for her. The ground, still remembering the weight of her power, trembles twice in acknowledgement. Half girl, half weather, she takes the path the council forgot to map, the one that leads toward the hireling's coin, the rival's grin, the ledger keeper in the dark. She carries the silver inside her fist, not as a threat and not as apology. The forest learns her name the way rivers learn stone. When the ridge drops away behind her and only wind can hear, she lets the last thread of her voice out where it won't be caught and prettied for council ears. I will return. The storm, faithful to vows made in motion, lifts the promise and drives it forward until even the old circle turns its head to listen. Night falls without mercy. Clouds bank like walls. The wind carries the smell of iron and wet bark, of fear stacked on fear, until even the trees hold their breath. She follows the river's broken edge to the old battlefield, the meadow with its spine of flat stones and a hill that remembers banners. Torches dot the ridge in a ragged semicircle, their smoke smeared by the weather. Wolves move below them, tense, silent, arranged by hands that favor spectacle over sense. The hired things arrive first, those smear-bodied shadows that behave like spills, that try to learn a shape and keep failing. They flood the low ground and hiss at her scent, jittering as if her name were a voltage. Behind them, the rival Alpha's line darkens the grasses, flanking the circle's defenders who stand too thin, too tired, outnumbered without admitting it aloud. The air holds the kind of hush that comes 4 heartbeats before a scream. She steps into the open, and the meadow seems to tilt toward her. The silver under her skin lifts its head like a wolf in tall grass. Breath goes in rough, comes out steady. She tastes ash at the back of her tongue, the old fear trying to dress itself in wisdom. She swallows it and lets the heat climb instead. They see her. The rival smiles with his gums, not his mouth. The defenders shift without permission, drawn by gravity and rumor. At the rear, a figure stands apart, hooded still, as if the ground itself had grown him there. No scent, no sound. Her shoulders know him before her eyes do. The strings on the night hum from his direction. "Look!" the rival calls, and his voice skates too easily like oil over rain. The circle's witch returns to finish what she began. Her pulse knocks once at her ribs and then slows. She is done explaining herself to men who sell their courage to the highest bidder. She opens her hand. The flame doesn't leap. It rises the way a tide rises, smooth, inevitable, shouldering space aside with the right that only rivers and old names possess. Silver unspools from her palm into a coil that does not smoke, does not waver. It simply is, light with weight, line with intention. The ground accepts it and answers with a hum that crawls up through her arches, into her knees, hips, spine, skull. Every vertebra a struck bell. Shadows recoil. The hired wolves, those who still remember what their grandmothers warned, shuffle back a pace as if distance could bargain with consequence. The defenders straighten, the thin line growing a spine. The first beast lunges anyway, compelled by whatever coin purchased its hunger. She does not retreat. She steps in. The silver line bends around her forearm and becomes edge. The beast hits it and collapses into a sag of darkness, as if the idea that animated it lost interest. Another tries from the side. She turns her wrist and the light scythes without cutting, a refusal so complete it functions like ruin. The meadow breathes, chest full, chest empty, watching its rules rewritten. The hooded figure moves, not toward her, not away. A small tilt, a correction, the way a puppeteer tightens a string to make a limb behave. The rival's eyes flick sideways. Obedience smooths his posture. He spreads his arms and gives the crowd his made-for-torches voice. There she is, the match near the thatch. Take her and the storm ends. She laughs once. The sound is not joy. It is discovery. The place in her throat where fear used to live can hold fire now. Her bones answer that laughter. They lengthen, not with the messy snap of a body breaking, but with a rightness that makes pain feel like a translation finishing. Shoulders open, spine extends, hands that held flame loosen and grow what flame had been trying to name. Fur dark as river rock under moonlight lifts along a back that remembers mountains. The world smells sharper. Sap, wet iron, the sour trace of the unnatural. Sound separates from noise. The hiss of shadow things becomes threads she can pluck or cut. Her jaws weight themselves with purpose. She does not vanish into an animal. The animal rises to meet the person, and the meeting is a joining. Her eyes burn. Not gold, not red, silver, like metal pulled fresh from a mold. Voices come with the change, not from outside, not from any circle, but from the long corridor, inside memory where the dead wait without boredom. Grandmothers who held walls in place with their shoulders, boys who died before they learned what their strength was for, women who taught their daughters the names of plants that kill and plants that heal, and when the lesson is the same. They do not command, they chant. The syllables curl around her ribs, threading muscle to muscle, turning power into choir. The rival lifts a hand. His front line charges, halfway brave, halfway forced, wolves. Men who were boys when someone taught them fear and called it a story. She meets them in the grass, and her movement is not rage. It is craft. A twist turns a bite into a throw. A low roll draws two off balance and gifts them to her allies. The silver spills from her fur like dew, shaken from grass blades, touching shadow beasts and unmaking only their permission to exist. Each contact hums a note the ancestors like. The hooded figure finally enters the field. He walks, and the meadow hates the way his boots touch it. His scent is a blank where scents go to starve. When he lifts his head, the hood does not reveal a face. It reveals a lack, a cutout where a person should be. Around that hollow, power skitters like flies around a wound. The rival straightens reflexively. Lieutenants look at him the way tethered dogs glance at a door. The chant inside her drops a key. She knows him without a name, not a rival alpha, something that learned how to wear one. The night flexes as he opens his hand. Shadow beasts fatten, their edges less ragged. Wolves in the rival's line flinch and then square their shoulders as if shame had been sharpened and jammed into their spines. He is not leading them. He is milking them. He speaks, and the voice is three voices, layered wrong, like chords played by a hand that never learned the instrument. "Child of the flame," he says, "your fire belongs to the oldest debt." She answers with a step that crushes the grass flat and leaves the earth unbothered. The silver along her ribs rises. The chant steadies into a rope she can pull. She does not give him her doubt. She has other uses for it. He lifts both arms. Shadow pours from his sleeves and lives in the air like smoke that forgot to find a ceiling. The first wave hits her pack like weather. Wolves buckle. Torches gutter. The rival's grin returns, relieved to serve, thrilled to avoid being chosen next. She runs, not away, through. Her body and the light agree on a line no one else can see. She rides it, a streak of dark and silver, shouldering past the hired wolves without breaking them, refusing the shadow stuff with a pressure it cannot metabolize. The hooded thing flicks fingers and throws a curl of night meant to bind. She dips her head, takes it across the back, and lets the fur drink the shock until it sours and dies. The ancestors raise their song, and the ground itself seems to lift under her last stride. She hits him at the moment he expects her to circle. He staggers, not from strength, but from surprise that someone would dare. His hood tilts back a fraction. The emptiness inside it deepens, pulling heat from the air. Cold detonates across the grass. Frost climbs blades like fear climbs rumor. She plants, twists, and the silver along her spine whips forward, not to slice, not to blind, to name. For an instant, the light outlines him, and the outline is wrong. Too many joints, too many angles, a body that refused to remember where a soul goes. The pack sees it. The rival sees it. Something in their posture breaks. He lunges to silence the revelation. She meets him with the phrase the meadow has been waiting for since the first wolf bled here. The flame gathers not at her teeth, not at her paws, in the space just in front of her heart. It condenses, heavy, patient, a star convinced to visit. "I am not your sacrifice," she says, and the words come out in human cadence from a wolf's throat, a harmony that makes the ridge shiver. She steps through him as the silver detonates, not as explosion, but as a pressure front that flattens lies. "I am your end." The light doesn't burn. It denies. It tells his magic no and means it. The shadow shivers, tries to become silk, smoke, swamp gas, anything but what it is. The silver refuses the shapeshift, forcing it to keep its own outline. Cracks run through the emptiness where a face should be, not like glass breaking, but like a mask forgetting its story. The chant inside her climbs, picks up names she never learned, and sets them on her tongue. He tries retreat. She gives him a field that will not allow a step he didn't earn. He tries dominance. She offers him a pack that won't respond to his borrowed voice. He tries pity, oldest trick, letting his edges sag, reaching for the hand of the part of her that wants to fix what hurts. She shows him the cave, firelight, scars, a man who said, "I see you," and then shows him the hall, the verdict, the doubt. The pity finds no purchase. Around them, wolves rise. The defenders find their feet and their center. The rival's line wobbles as shame loses the script it was reading from. The hired beasts thin, edges fraying, attention scattering like birds when a true hawk arrives. She breathes once, hard. The silver that had circled her returns like migrating light, tucking itself back along bone and nerve. The transformation does not undo, it completes. Wolf and woman hold the same skin without arguing. He sags. The hood falls entirely. There is nothing underneath now but a collapse held together by habit. She considers mercy, the kind she used to beg for in halls that did not practice it. The ancestors say nothing. They trust her to know the difference between ending and cruelty. She ends him. No grand gesture, no shouted law. A step forward, a palm raised, human again, steady, and a quiet pulse that unhooks whatever stitches kept his borrowed power from falling out. The shadow peels in strips, then dust, then absence. Wind rushes to fill the missing space and finds no grief waiting. Silence follows, not the fearful kind, the kind that stands and watches something become true. She turns. Wolves watch her with eyes not on their knees. The rival staggers, suddenly very mortal. He looks at his hands like they failed to warn him. When he tries to summon followers with a lift of his chin, nothing comes. His voice cracks on the first syllable of a command. He swallows it, then bolts. And the meadow lets him run. For now. She does not chase. That is tomorrow's work. She lifts her head. The night smells different, cleaner in the way a room smells after windows are opened. The defenders take one breath together, deep, like people remembering how. On the ridge, torches steady. On the low ground, frost melts where her paws pressed. Somewhere beyond the line, a single owl calls and is answered. She stands in the trampled grass, fur letting go of silver strand by strand, and listens to her body finish choosing itself. The chant in her blood doesn't fade. It settles into background. Like a river behind a house, always there, always moving. No one speaks first. That is good. Words will ruin this if they hurry. She looks at the place where the shadow alpha came apart and lets the wind take the last flakes of nothing. The vow she gave the hall becomes the air she pulls into her lungs. When she finally breathes out, the meadow seems to breathe with her. She has been weapon, curse, exile. Now she is weather and will. Flame that warms and says no with the same mouth. The battlefield remembers. The pack will, too. The meadow holds its breath. Frost loosens. Torches gutter, then steady. As if the fire itself is deciding whom it will keep warm. She stands where the shadow came apart, silver sinking back beneath her skin like tide sliding under rock. The grass remembers her weight. The pack watches without a single order spoken. Somewhere on the ridge, a banner that never learned surrender finally stops trembling. Listen to the quiet, not the helpless kind, the honest kind, the kind that arrives when a lie leaves the room. He doesn't approach her, not yet. The alpha stays 3 paces back, as if the distance can keep his doubt from touching her again. His eyes are ember. His hands are empty. His chest rises like a man carrying news to himself. He sees her as the circle saw her, as the meadow now knows her. Not a problem to solve, not a miracle to worship. Weather with a will. It hurts him the way truth hurts men who built strong houses on soft ground. Would you have chosen her or feared her too? The question moves between bodies like wind through tall grain. It rests on old wolves with scarred ears and younger ones whose names haven't hardened yet. It wanders the ridge, slips into the hall by a crack in the door, finds the council's chairs, tests their legs. It visits a father who has run out of tidy versions of love. It presses its face to the glass of every window in the village and fogs the pain. Is she savior or curse? Measure it with more than fear. Weigh it with more than the memory of barns and boys and the red glow of a moon that liked to watch. She did not beg. She did not gloat. She named the dark, and when it tried to use her to make itself bigger, she refused it without burning the room. That is not luck. That is not accident. That is a choice sharpened on exile and carried without applause. Yet the question is not done with you. It bends back, gentler, honest as rain on stone. If she had ruined, would you have forgiven? If she had faltered, would you have stayed? When a fire is young, we call it wild. When it warms us, we call it home. How many times in your quiet life have you renamed what you feared after it saved you? He takes one step closer, only one. The distance still matters. The pack can smell the decision in him before he's brave enough to put it in his mouth. He is learning the difference between guarding people from a woman and guarding a woman who guards people. His voice, when he finally finds it, is too soft for ceremony and too steady for apology. She hears it, but does not turn. Not yet. She is listening to a different sound, the one inside her ribs that was once a stampede and is now a river. Would you have chosen her or feared her too? Look at the wolves who were hired to hate. See how their shoulders lower now that the leash is ash. Watch the rival try to remember his reasons and come up short. Even the meadow, patchworked with prints and split grass, holds a shape that promises growth after the thaw. Curses are sloppy. They leave rooms worse than they found them. She left this place cleaner than she met it. Is she savior or curse? Perhaps she is neither. Perhaps she is something the old language didn't trust enough to name, the kind of power that keeps its blade sheathed until a lie requires an edge, the kind of mercy that refuses to be confused with surrender, the kind of woman who can be both fire and shelter and not apologize for either. The owl calls once from the tree line. The sound lands like a signature. She breathes, and the pack breathes with her. Not in worship, in relief, in recognition. A few go to the fallen and lift with care that wasn't in their hands an hour ago. A few look past her toward whatever ledger keeper remains. They are imagining a road that will need teeth and patience. Work waits. So does judgment. But the night, for one careful span of heartbeats, gives them this, the proof that a story can turn. And you, listening with your own weather in your chest. What did it do to you, watching her stand while the hall named her ruin? Did your palms heat? Did the old bruise under your ribs answer when she spoke from a wolf's throat and made a promise without asking permission? When she said, "I am not your sacrifice," did something inside you climb to its feet? Would you have chosen her or feared her too? If you were in the circle when the stones woke, whose echo would have lived in your mouth, the council's or your own? If you had a daughter with light under her skin, would you name it danger before you learned its grammar? If a man said, "I see you," and then hesitated when the chairs creaked, would you leave or would you teach him how to stand? Is she savior or curse? Tonight, the meadow answered. Tomorrow the hall will try to speak over it. Stories do not end because a villain turns to dust. They bend because people keep telling them with cleaner hands. So keep listening. If this tale burned inside you, if the river behind your ribs rose when hers did, if the quiet after the battle felt like a door unlocking in your own chest, if a woman claiming her name without asking made your fear smaller and your spine taller, subscribe to Kismet Publishing Collection. Here. We tell stories that set hearts ablaze. The battlefield exhales a long, uneasy silence. Smoke coils low over the grass, the last remnants of torchlight bending weakly against the weight of night. Wolves stand scattered in the meadow, bruised, bloodied, but breathing. The rival is gone, the shadow torn into absence, yet the quiet does not feel like victory. It feels like a held note, stretched too long, waiting to resolve. She stands in the center, silver still ghosting her skin, fur receding until she is only herself again. Half-torn cloak, half-open wounds, all weight she cannot set down. The alpha is near, close enough that she can hear his breath hitch, far enough that his hesitation still has room to live. His hands hang empty at his sides, and though his eyes glow faintly gold, their fire does not reach the questions pressed behind them. The meadow is listening. So is the ridge. So is the forest, leaning closer with each gust of wind. For a moment, it seems the earth itself bends inward, curious whether the night has finally finished its work. Then, a sound slides through the silence. Not a howl, not the whistle of wind, a whisper. Carried wrong, the kind that doesn't move through air but under it. She is not the only one. The words freeze the breath in every chest. Wolves stiffen, ears twitch, but no muzzle finds a scent. The whisper has no direction, no body. It exists like frost exists, everywhere at once, impossible to point at. Her pulse spikes. The silver under her skin claws to the surface again, begging to be let out, but she grips her own arms, forcing it still. This isn't a fight to win. It's a truth arriving. Too late to stop, too heavy to ignore. The alpha lifts his head, scanning the shadows. His jaw locks, his shoulders tense. For all his scars, for all his strength, she sees it. The flash of recognition. He has heard something like this before. He didn't tell her. He didn't tell anyone. The meadow quivers. The ground shifts once, shallow, like something vast turning in its sleep. Stones crack. Water leaps inside the riverbed as if slapped by a hand beneath. Wolves stagger, steady, look down as if expecting the soil itself to open. She closes her eyes, listening past her fear. The whisper lingers in her bones. Repeating not his words but his weight. Not the only one, not the only one, not the only one. When her eyes open, she finds him watching her, not with doubt, not with pity, with knowledge. Terrible, unfinished, heavy as prophecy. The gold in his stare is too sharp to be confusion. He knew, or at least he suspected. The ground trembles again, harder. Earth groans. Trees shudder on the ridge. Wolves crouch low, tails stiff, hackles raised, not at an enemy they can see, but at the vibration rolling up from beneath their paws. And then it stops. Not gradually. Like a hand removing weight from a chest, the tremor ends. The night returns to its hush, but the hush has changed. It is not relief. It is waiting. She straightens, the silver still threading faint across her wrists, and whispers aloud, though her voice cracks on the edges. What is coming? The alpha doesn't answer. His silence is its own confession. Far beyond the tree line, a low rumble answers for him, too deep to be thunder, too alive to be stone. The wolves shift uneasily, eyes dragging toward the horizon where no light yet burns. But something moves, slow and certain. She lifts her chin, wounded, exhausted, but unbroken. The meadow around her carries the smell of blood and frost and unfinished stories. She speaks into the silence, not for them, not even for him, for the truth itself waiting in the dark. This isn't over. The wind takes her words and throws them against the sky. The ground, restless, quivers once more in agreement. And somewhere unseen, the darker alpha, the one who has been rising in silence, listens and smiles. The night ends not with peace, but with a promise. The war has only just begun.